All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Lead Up Podcast, where we connect with dope and diverse leaders to learn more about their leadership journey so you can level up your leadership. Hashtag Lead Up. As always, I want to give a special shout out to Darling New Media, Sacramento's premier podcast studios, here to help tell your story. Make sure to check them out, darlingnewmedia.com, and connect with my guy, Nate. And of course, can't forget about the listeners and viewers to the podcast. Thank you so much for all the love and support. I've been getting amazing positive feedback from everybody. Even got some feedback about this shirt that some people may have spotted last week in the last episode. Dope and diverse. Those will be on sale pretty soon, so be on the lookout for that. Make sure to follow the podcast page at Lead Up Podcast on Instagram. But without further ado, I want to introduce my next dope and diverse guest here for today, and that is none other than Neil Brown. Welcome to the Lead Up Podcast, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate the time. Excited. I know I've been reaching out to you like, man, I got to get you on here. And so I'm glad that we can make it happen. So,
Me too.
but first, want to make sure that people know who you are. So, give us a little bit of background, a little bit of the story, what you do professionally now. Who is Neil Brown?
All right. So my story starts on the East Coast, actually. I was born in Philadelphia. I grew up in South Jersey for about 8 years. My dad got a job in Arizona. So we moved the family out to the Phoenix area. I lived in the Phoenix area for a grand total of about 15 years. Grew up there, went to school there, did my first year of college back on the East Coast, and then went back to Arizona State and finished up at Arizona State. From there, I managed kind of through some dumb luck, good fortune to get connected to an Intel recruiter when I was actually working as a teller at Wells Fargo. So got recruited to an Intel internship and came out to the Folsom area, did a summer internship, managed to extend that while I was finishing school, so finished that remotely. Went back, wrapped up ASU, and then came right back out to the Folsom, Sacramento area and started full time in finance at Intel. And so I've been at Intel now for a grand total of 12 years.
Wow.
Almost all of that time has been spent in finance. I've had a number of different finance roles. I've been able to support a couple different organizations in research and development. And then I've spent several years supporting sales and marketing finance in, uh, in a couple different kind of roles in sales and marketing. In the middle of that, I, again, through dumb luck and good fortune, the theme,
Yeah.
I was on vacation and found out that I could get LASIK just through a friend of a friend. Found out I could get LASIK and still try to be an Air Force pilot, and that was something that I had dreamed of doing since I was a little kid. Something, probably watching Top Gun too much, but that was a dream, and I found out I had the chance to go chase it, and so I went for it. And you fast forward a few years, had the chance to go through pilot training, took military leave from Intel
Mhm.
for about 3 years, did all the training, came back, flew full time for a little bit, and now I'm full time working in finance at Intel, and then part time flying for the Air Force. Been
Wow.
very very fortunate, and get to kind of live in these two very different worlds.
Yeah, I definitely want to dive into that a little bit more because it's not too often where one people are thinking like you can actually do that. You can like leave and a
That's what
couple
I
years,
say.
right? And so let's dive into that a little bit more about kind of how that dream came to pass and also like what made you kind of take that extra leap and actually pursue it because a lot of times I know even for me I kind of like to personalize when it comes to uh, although this was not necessarily a dream, this was something that was a definitely, when I say this, I mean the podcast was definitely a huge interest of mine, but I didn't think it was possible, right? So just even that mentality of saying, that's not for me, or I don't see myself doing that. But now having done, almost 50 episodes later, I'm so happy that I did take that leap and I have been just on continue this amazing journey of like learning more about myself and other people and just something that I can do. But I had to initially take that first step, right? So just tell me a little bit more about the steps that you take to get closer to your dream and now, still flying today.
Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of sounds cliche, but it's kind of a possibility thinking mentality in terms
Mhm.
of um, seeing something and going for it. And there's a lot of other factors too, right? I mean, I really am very fortunate because a little bit more of that story of running into somebody who told me that something
Mhm.
was possible. That's just part of the good luck. I came back from that trip, and I started talking to another finance colleague of mine who has turned into a very close friend and a mentor. And he sat about 20 feet from me. My cubicle was at the end of the row, and his was in the middle of the row. Right, there's 7,000 people that work
Wow.
at Intel in Folsom, and here's this one guy. And I go into his cube, and I'm like, "Hey, man, are you a pilot? What's your deal?"
Yeah.
Right? Because you've got these airplane things, and I know there's something else going on here. And turned out that he was a pilot,
Wow.
and he was working full time at Intel. And he is also one of the best people that I have ever met, and just so gracious and so enthusiastic about flying. I mean,
Yeah.
I say it jokingly, but only half. It's kind of a wonder that we didn't get like fired, because from that point, I think we spent more time at
Yeah.
work talking about flying than
Yeah.
actually doing work. Uh, and
Don't worry, I
so,
won't share this to Intel, so you're good.
so I mean, it's just like,
Yeah.
there's opportunities that come up,
Mhm.
and they then it's a matter, I think, of trying to make the most of the opportunity.
Yeah.
But I have to recognize just the sheer amount of good luck and good fortune that comes with that too, because I had people in my life, or
Mhm.
found people in my life, who were able to help mentor me through that process. I had the means to be able to go, and I mean, I went and got my private pilot's license while I was working, to be competitive to apply for the Air Force, because
Yeah.
that's kind of how that ends up working out. That's not something that everybody has access to. And being able to go and do that, and have those resources and those
Right.
people is huge.
Yeah.
But like you're talking about, right, you find something, you go after it.
Mhm.
And that, I think, is that like kind of cliche possibility thinking stuff, where it's like, hey,
Yeah.
what I could go try for this, and then you start to
Mhm.
kind of break it down into the pieces, and you start to achieve
Yeah.
those pieces, and they start to happen, and it's like, oh, hey, I think this is actually going to work.
Yeah. And tell me, because it's funny even talking about, becoming a pilot, and um I think I've been seeing more, ironically, just more pictures of people that have learned to fly. Funny enough, I don't know if it's just because, like, I was thinking about you as we're preparing for the podcast. I'm like, maybe just looking at more things. Anyways, maybe it's meta getting all the information. Anyways, back to the uh, what does actually, like, flight school look like? Because like, what is that process and, like, that journey? Like, what does it entail, right? Because I figure it's a little bit more than, you got to go. It's a little bit harder than driving, right? So you got to figure out a lot of different things that I'm just totally unaware of. Like, talk to me about, like, that experience and what you learned about yourself, and maybe how some of those things have now spilled over to now your day to day, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So learning how to fly, I mean, aside from being something that I wanted to do since I was a little kid, so there's just kind of that, like, there's a
Yeah.
level of focus and enthusiasm there that you get when you're chasing something like that. But learning how to fly, has I kind of describe it as, flying itself is kind of this amazing mixture of kind of art and science, because
Mm,
obviously there's a ton of sciencey stuff with
yeah.
flying, but then you're out there flying. I mean,
Mm,
I have had, kind of out of body experiences almost, where, flying kind of close to the ground just down here, south of Sacramento, when I was working on my private pilot's license, and looking down, and you can see the cows on the
wow.
ground. And you just kind of realize
Hmm.
what it is that you're doing, and there's just kind of that amazing experience. And assuming that you're not getting airsick and stuff like that, which definitely takes away from things. But if you're really able to enjoy it like that, there's just kind of like that through line
Hmm.
of enthusiasm that kind of keeps building. But really, there's also, it's a constant challenge,
Hmm.
because there's, from early on, and still to today, learning is, or excuse me, flying is just a constant process of learning.
Yeah.
And you start to kind of recognize that you're doing something that you've never done before,
Hmm.
and it's hard. And that might be some of the basics of learning how to fly. It could be landing, it could be talking on the radio. Everybody generally tends to have a hard time talking on the radio,
Uh-huh.
because you're over here trying to fly or turn or whatever, and then all of
Right.
a sudden you're listening for your call sign on the radio, and then you're trying to talk back and figure out what to say to these people who are busy and are, you're trying not to screw up. So there's all this pressure, and talking on the radio, you can't figure out what to do.
Yeah.
And there's, oh, you say this, you say that, and you
Yeah.
work on it. But, you do that a few times, and then all of a sudden everything snaps into focus.
Hmm.
And you're going through and you're learning this, and then all of a sudden it snaps into focus. It's like
Yeah.
you can almost feel yourself and your brain kind of expanding, which is it's a strange thing, but with flying, because it's so, there's a repetition to it, so you're getting that kind of real-time feedback of,
Mhm.
I suck at this, and I would like to not suck at this anymore. So
Yeah.
you keep working on it, and then it
Yeah.
starts to work.
Yeah.
And, like, not only is that kind of an amazing experience, I think, but it's also very satisfying, because it's
Mm.
like, here's the next challenge, and then you go do it, and then here's the
Yeah.
next challenge, and so it just kind of builds on itself.
Yeah. Man, I love how you described the science and the art. I can definitely relate in that sense in terms of this, obviously it's not flying, but there's a lot of ins and outs that like need to happen, right, for this particular thing. But then there's the art, right, and the appreciation that's to your point, yeah, like you get this feeling or excitement that just I don't know, it's just an amazing feeling. And something that I definitely want to touch on at least briefly uh, when it comes to learning, as you're talking about, was kind of like our own learning experience that we had through the NELP program. Shout out to class 12. um,
Class
and
12.
without giving too much, because I know there's a lot of red tape that we can't give too much away about the NELP experience unless you're in NELP. But in terms of your own experience and your own journey through that, like how did you change through that experience? And again, for those that are maybe tuning in or listening in for the first time, NELP is a fellowship program in Sacramento that brings in a group of really strangers sometimes. Right before this, I didn't even
We didn't
knew
know
who,
each
right.
other.
But just an amazing um, opportunity that was challenging many times. I'm not even gonna say at times, many times throughout virtual experience. But we come together and came out of it better, I would say, personally. But I'm curious to hear more about your own journey because I think there was moments from when we started to now, like things have definitely changed, either on an individual but also as a collective level from our group.
Yeah. So for me, I think my NELP experience, a big part of it was getting connected to the class.
Yeah.
Um, getting connected to a group of people who I never would have met otherwise, and
Mhm.
I'm very, very grateful for that. I got connected to NELP through some folks at Intel who had gone through before me, so had a, nothing. I didn't have any inside line, but had a general idea of kind of high level what it
Mhm.
was, and knew that it was an amazing opportunity. And so, it was just, I think, really grateful for our class and getting to know our class and experience NELP together.
Mhm.
Um, another thing for me is the board service aspect
Mhm.
of NELP, which is a really important component of the program. And, you know, getting to be on a board now and participate in that way and feel like I'm hopefully being helpful with the organization. I'm on the board of the FER Nature Center, right here in the
Mhm.
Sacramento area, right on the river, and a beautiful area, lots of programs supporting education, which is really important. And being able to jump in and start working with them right away and getting
Mhm.
involved in like the finance committee, and realizing that I have some of that personal experience that and professional experience that I can bring to bear on the board and to help benefit the
Mhm.
community is something that frankly I was not doing enough of in the first place. And so NELP has been a great catalyst for me to get more involved in the community in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that is one of the outcomes and actually requirements, right? That we would join a board, but it's all intentional in terms of the programming to make sure that we're being sharpened, right, as better leaders for our community. And I'm now getting diving deeper into kind of like the leadership realm now of questions and kind of picking your brain at this, but how do you continue to grow and develop as a leader, right? I know you mentioned already a little bit about your story in flight school and the constant learning that you had to do, but now having completed that and now continuing your own profession, even outside of your work, like how do you continue to develop and grow as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I think the kind of the traditional linear leadership path, which is the management path, and that's kind
Yeah.
of where I'm trying to go in terms of Intel.
Hmm.
Um, I'm still not a people manager. I want to get there. That's definitely one of my goals, and then kind of get in towards some of the other levels of management that there are. Um, and so with that, there's already some structure, and that's something that I've kind of been reminded of lately, even through NELP. Also, um, being grateful for some of the structure that's in place because you can kind of guide your growth and development, and there's structure for feedback on that. And
Yeah.
when you're coming in and saying, "Hey, I want to be a manager. This is what I want," or "Hey, I want to be a leader," which are not necessarily the same thing.
True.
Um, but when you want to do both and you're kind of soliciting feedback from your own management, right? That I think helps identify areas because you're getting that outside feedback,
Yeah.
and that feedback is hugely important and something that I don't think that I solicit enough in
Hmm.
terms of asking people for how things are going or what I could be doing better.
Yeah.
Um, so the leadership journey, I think, is there's some structure there,
Yeah.
and then it's also kind of like a what do you put an emphasis on?
Hmm.
Because if you want to be kind of a leading through the people who work for you,
Yeah.
which is what I believe in, is kind of I think kind of a servant leadership concept.
Yeah.
If you take care of your people, then they will, one be successful and hopefully happy as reasonably as they can be. But they'll take care of you, right? You don't
Hmm.
drive people to go do something and then force it on them. I think it's a much more organic and a much healthier relationship if you can work with people and kind of help them lead into their own success,
Right.
which
Right.
becomes organizational success.
Hmm.
And so in the opportunities that I do have to kind of work like more of the peer relationship, at
Yeah.
the same time I'm starting to get to the level that I can try to manage within that, not manage the people, but manage what's going on and how I'm interacting,
Hmm.
and getting some feedback from that and figure out, okay,
Yeah.
how do I want to try to do this if I was kind of in a management spot,
Yeah.
or take a situation and learn more about it from a manager's perspective.
For sure. What is something you, kind of looking back and reflecting, what would you say is like either the most recent change or and just in terms of like your own leadership journey or just how you try to show up now? Um, it doesn't have to be necessarily connected to NELP, but just more of, you know, if this was a few years ago, what's been the biggest difference for Neil Brown in terms of how he approaches himself and how he tries to show up day to day at either in the workplace or for his community?
I think part of it is a matter of like being engaged,
Yeah.
and holding myself accountable to that because I'm not as engaged as I should be a lot of the time.
Uh-huh.
There's distractions everywhere. Sometimes it's personal side, or sometimes it's just there's so much work that you don't
Mhm.
stay in the moment with anything that you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, but I think being engaged and recognizing what I do and how that impacts other people, and then talking to them about that, um, and getting some of that feedback. That's been something for me that I think builds on that kind of people first mentality and the
Mhm.
desire to be a people first leader. And that itself is something that I think has evolved over the last few years
Yeah.
of wanting to have that kind of servant leader mentality.
And just to kind of dig a little bit, is that something you felt like you were kind of aware of before, and maybe you just spent more time to kind of like get over like that hump? And I only bring that up because again, there were many instances. I had Courtney about 2 episodes ago, and I specifically remember at one point during our program where I was like, I'm gonna intentionally try to respond to Courtney in a way where I can get out of my comfort zone, and it didn't go too well. Uh, but it was one of those like risks that I was willing to take again because
Yeah.
of the, yeah, as we like to say, the container of the program. But again, I think it was one of those things that for everybody there was. risks that we either can step up to or step back from. And yeah, and I know again, I always remember the not the incident, but with you and Achini going back and forth. That was the one of my highlights of you, of like that was amazing just because I was on your team. But again, just kind of um, again, I guess what I'm trying to say with all this too, and hopefully for the people listening and watching is there are some times where we may have some sort of awareness or kind of like this thing in our stomach that I would say that's like, I don't know what that is, but I think we just gotta allow ourselves to kind of like take that risk, right? Or even get that feedback to your point, to really kind of recognize what that is and how we can kind of overcome it. Hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe part of what you're talking about is like there's a it's like you have to know what your priorities are.
There we go. Yeah,
And
yeah.
like if the work is always going to be there. And if I like switch gears and talk about like the experience that I have, because the airplane that I fly has a crew, right? And
Mm,
so as a pilot, and I'm not there yet, but eventually I'm going to be an aircraft commander. You're responsible for the crew. You have a
mhm.
job to do, and you're trying to go do this thing with a group of people. Um, and if the priority in work or in flying, if it's the one job or the current assignment,
Yeah.
right, then I think that kind of misses the bigger picture,
Hmm.
where there's like a how are we doing this
Yeah.
element to it. And I've seen in both areas, right, in flying and in at Intel, where people are mindful of how are we going and doing this thing, right,
Hmm.
and that I think it gives you a chance to kind of set your own agenda
Yeah.
and to kind of stay true to something that lasts longer than just the current, whatever the current fire is that you're trying to put
Right.
out.
Right. No, that's good. That's good. And it sounds like the next thing for you for aircraft, what does that look like? Because it like looks like you're trying to level up now.
Yeah, I'm a little slow to level up. If we're being honest, this is something that normally would not take me as long as
Uh-huh.
it has. But you go and you kind of pass certain requirements. You go off to do specific training for the C-17. We go back to Oklahoma and do another month or so of training in Oklahoma,
Hmm.
and then you have kind of multiple levels of evaluation that you go through, both there and then on the road. You go and you take an airplane and a crew, and you have an evaluator pilot, and you go and you're in charge. And the evaluator pilot is basically there to make sure you don't do anything, monumentally stupid,
Hmm.
and two, to see if you really are ready to go be an aircraft commander.
Yeah.
So there's this very dynamic evaluation where stuff usually goes wrong in some form or fashion. Um, I was actually just talking to a friend of mine last night, and he just did this in a different airplane, and he was literally halfway around the world and
Yeah.
getting all kinds of paperwork problems and all this stuff going on, and it just the curveballs are coming at you all the time.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how that works, and it's kind of is it translates a surprising amount between both jobs,
Hmm.
because there's always going to be the next fire. There's always going to be this other
Yeah.
thing or competing priorities or personalities,
Yeah.
that you got to just kind of work through.
Yeah.
And whether you're on the road with a crew trying to make a mission happen and trying to stay safe, or you're trying to just work and take care of
Yeah.
your people and get the work done, right?
Hmm.
Like you're just going to have to navigate that stuff and try to make reasonable decisions in real time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also, I think not be too hard is you got to give yourself grace too. Right?
Yeah.
It's like you do the best that you can with the information that you have at the time,
Hmm.
and then you learn from that.
Yeah.
And you got to have that kind of there's the external feedback loop, but then there's the internal also. Where it's like, hey, I feel like I suck at this. Maybe I go validate that,
Yeah.
but then I also, I need to do this more often. Is be deliberate about like, oh, I want
Hmm.
to be better at that, and then actually invest the energy that it takes to do that,
Yeah.
and then be better and
Yeah.
hold myself to a higher standard.
Yeah, that's so good, man. And I think this is a great opportunity to, and before we get to the lightning round, which is one of my favorite segments here. But you talked about moving up in Intel, right? When it comes to management, pursuing aircraft commander. So a lot of things that that's in store for you in your kind of next phase of the journey. But and there's a lot of folks that hear that, whether it's peers, people, seasoned professionals, a lot of young professionals that tune in. Like, what would you, what practical advice would you give and share with those that want to help themselves to be better, to lead up where they're at today?
Yeah, I mean, something that is really important that again I don't do enough of is setting goals.
Mm,
But it's not just setting the goal, it's also breaking that down. I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day. I asked a very similar question, so I'll
yeah,
pass on some of the wisdom.
there you go.
Um, but some of the advice that they gave was that when you have a big thing that you're trying to go do, don't try to boil the ocean, right? Take it and break it into smaller parts and boil that and
Hmm,
go and be thoughtful about it, but go and take this big thing that you're trying to do
yeah,
and break it down into reasonably sized chunks and then go work your way through those chunks,
yeah,
right? And it's similar to the basics of learning how to fly, like I was kind of talking about. Like you get a certain sense of accomplishment and also a certain amount of momentum when you have those steps that you can take towards that goal and you feel like you're accomplishing those steps, right? Because then you're building that momentum towards that
yeah,
goal, and that has a really powerful effect,
yeah,
even if it's just for you psychologically.
yeah. I love that you mentioned that. Thank you for that wisdom. And it just made me think, and I want to publicly say thank you for really encouraging us in the class to reach out to Tiffany Harder, um, because that's been a game changer for me, honestly. Because like as soon as you talk about goals and really not trying to boil the ocean, it was like it just made me think exactly of how she breaks things down for me currently, even today, as I continue to invest in myself with coaching with her, who I hope to have on the podcast very soon. So yeah, thank you seriously for that because I mean, the coaching has been phenomenal. Besides her being just an amazing person already, but just the coaching has been really a game changer. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Um,
You're
but
welcome. I couldn't agree
yeah,
more, by the way. Tiff is awesome. And
yes,
again, right, this is the stupid luck that is my life, which is just kind of the running theme, right? I mean, I got connected to Tiff because I did know, right? They're just
right,
good,
exactly.
good fortune.
Mhm.
And yeah, she does an amazing job with the coaching.
Yeah.
It's solid. You should
Yeah.
check it out.
So, yes, for those that I will have her on soon, I promise, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But before then, we definitely got to hit this lightning round. These are questions I did not share with you beforehand. These are just fun questions, top of the time to get you going here, and then we'll
All right, let's
close
do it.
out. All right.
All right.
So very simple one to start off: chocolate or vanilla.
Chocolate.
If you had to do one karaoke song to save your life, it would be
Run in the opposite direction.
Run.
Oh,
Oh, we're gonna have to get you one, Neil.
I know. I don't have a good go-to karaoke song.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to that one.
All right.
Uh, best travel destination that you've been on.
Ooh, Barcelona was pretty great.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Favorite dessert.
I mean, it's going to be something chocolate,
Chocolate. I figured.
generally speaking. Uh, I've made these chocolate. It's like a triple chocolate cupcake.
Ooh,
Actually, you know what? Favorite dessert: chocolate and peanut butter.
there you go.
There you go.
Morning person or night owl.
Night Owl,
Favorite music artist.
Dave Matthews Band.
So that means you got to do a Dave Matthews karaoke. See how I got you there?
Mm. I'll regret
Pineapple.
that.
Pineapples on pizza. Yes or no?
It's allowed.
It's allowed. Neil making
Yes.
this
If
hard
you
for
here
me.
you go. I'll rep somebody. So Pizza
Here we go.
Supreme Being in
Uh-huh.
Sacramento is phenomenal,
It's not
and
Supreme?
it is supreme,
Okay.
supremely phenomenal.
Yeah.
But they are great, and Ben at Pizza Supreme Being is just an awesome dude. Does amazing work, and did some really awesome stuff during the pandemic of kind of paring back his business and trying to encourage people to support other local businesses. So
That's
good
awesome.
dude, great pizza. supposedly, if you order a Neil Brown, you'll get an off
What?
menu pizza, but it's jalapeno and pineapple, no spam, because the
Ooh,
Hawaiian has the spam,
ooh.
but
That actually sounds
jalapeno and
really good.
pineapple is I
So you're saying if I go get a Neil Brown, okay,
according to him, that will
okay,
mean something to them. So I
okay.
don't know. It's
I'll
not on
have
the
to
menu,
find
but
Ben.
let me
I'll
know
have to
if you
talk to.
try it.
Okay, I'll talk to Ben. All right, here we go. Moving on. In your high school yearbook, you were most likely to.
I don't even know. Lose my yearbook. I don't think I even have it in this state.
What will
I don't
be
know.
the what will be like the tagline?
Fly
You most.
airplanes,
Oh.
which isn't even true, but
Yeah.
that's okay. It sounds good.
Right. Right. Something that most people wouldn't know about you.
When I was oh, when I worked at Wells Fargo, I got robbed as a bank teller.
While you were working. Okay, we gotta have. That's gonna be for another episode sometime.
I got
uh,
a couple. I got a couple
right. You
stories.
got a couple stories. All right. Uh, worst nickname given to you. Oh, that's the one. That's the one you got to share.
I'm not particularly tall, and played basketball longer than somebody who's not particularly tall would usually play basketball, and
Hmm.
wasn't necessarily good. Didn't help that I couldn't really see that well, needed
Yeah.
glasses, not
Yeah.
the whole thing. But
I can relate.
uh, there was a point where for some reason I thought that really getting height on a shot was somehow beneficial, but somehow that translated into me having the nickname Johnny Rocket,
Oh,
which was not, you know,
yeah. I got you. It's okay. But now you fly over them, right? So,
yeah,
they,
yeah, yep.
I got you. I got you. All right, last two here. Biggest lesson you learned so far in 2022.
This is the lightning round.
Yeah, man.
Oh, sometimes it's okay to slow down.
Love that. Last one to close us out. Every leader needs what?
I was gonna say a follower, but that's what comes to mind.
Every leader needs a follower.
Every leader that needs a follower. No, every leader needs to listen.
Ooh, there you go. You heard it here. Neil Brown. Every leader needs to listen. Um, thank you so much, Neil, for your time and your wisdom. I greatly appreciate you. I know we're going to connect soon, but thank you all for tuning in. Catch y'all on the next episode of the Lead Up Podcast. Peace.
Thanks, Renato.